1, 2, 3, 4. I got thoughts running through my head. I got thoughts, can't you see? I got thoughts, the books I read. I got thoughts, won't you listen to me?
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to The Author Has Thoughts, where I finally get back to discussing my books. In particular, I'll be discussing one of my Cyberpunk novels in the Bridge Chronicles series. It's the third novel. It's called If Tribe Equals, and there's some little brackets and stuff. And if you don't know, I am Gary Ballard, author of 12 novels, or 12 books. I've got it'll be six novels soon in the Bridge Chronicles series, and I've got six novellas in a Cyberpunk series called the Stepping Stone Cycle, and there's a short story collection that's based in the Bridge Chronicles series. So when that novel gets published, and I'm not sure when it'll be, hopefully by summer, then I will have 13, but right now I've got 12. So this is me blathering on in a podcast. I tend to just let the camera, you turn the camera on and just start rambling, going through. Sometimes I'll read some passages. Like I said, today is the first video of, I don't know how many is going to be, of me discussing my third novel and the third Cyberpunk novel in the Bridge Chronicles series, If Tribe Equals. It's if bracket tribe bracket equal sign. Now, the reason I titled it that was kind of a play on programming language. A lot of programming languages have what's called if-then statements, where if this condition is met, do this thing. So I kind of wanted to play on that, and it was kind of building on the last book's title was The No Circuit, which I had thought of as a circuit being the internet and computers and all that, so I wanted it to be something with circuit. Well, now I decided to use sort of a programming shorthand code type of thing for If Tribe Equals, the third one. Before I get into the whole book, I will say this is my favorite book that I've written. This is the one, and that may change if I read the next two or the next four that I haven't actually done a video on yet. But to this point, this is my favorite one. And I'll explain that more at the end of the series when I talk about the review of the book. The concept of the programming language was me trying to express the theme of the book. So the theme of the book was about tribalism, and it was about individuals' reactions when their feelings of tribalism is threatened. And everyone in the book is in some way, shape, or form, and I believe this in real life too, is in some way or form part of a tribe, part of a set or gang or family or a nationality, a faction, a political party. It's all very much about tribalism. And I wanted to play off that whole tribal thing with Bridge, who is very much, considers himself very much not part of a tribe. He kind of tries to act as if he is not necessarily above it all, but outside of it at least, and able to comment on it. And he ends up finding that that's clearly not the case, because through various things that happen here, and it's nothing that's stated in the book. There's no one, there's no one overarching passage I can think of that symbolizes that. But Bridge ends up putting himself on the line, both physically and in other ways, for what is in essence a tribe, which in this case happens to be the five families and their citizens brigade. I'll have some links in the description to the five families, which it's a Globalpedia article on my website, or on the Bridge Chronicles website, talking about what the five families are. But just to overview, the five families are five gangs that either existed before or were formed because of the riots in 2027. Those gangs are generally built along racial or territorial bounds. So we have one of the 5 families that we met in the first book in Under the Amoral Bridge was Stonewall Ricardo. He was the second in command of the Los Magos, which is a Mexican gang. And an offshoot of Los Magos was El Diablos. They were formed after the riots, basically because of a beef between Los Magos and El Diablos. We have Asia Town, which is a conglomeration of 3 of the gangs from the Asian part of town. We have a Chinese gang, a Korean gang, and a Japanese gang. And they all kind of, during the riots, banded together to protect kind of their part of town from, and most of these gangs, by the way, were formed to protect their territory, their turf, from looters, as well as police and corporate police that were basically trying to stop the riots. And in the process of trying to stop the riots, they were also just fucking all kinds of shit up, tearing up neighborhoods and all that. And it didn't matter if you were part of the rioters or not, you were probably going to get a truncheon to the head. So the riots, in essence, and this is probably one of the things, one of these days I'm going to write a prequel set in the riots. The riots really became, street warfare between the police, the corporate police, and a lot of the families, the 5 families. One of the other families was the Hollywood Starlets, which was basically a bunch of white kids that got together and said, let's get in on this gang shit. So the Hollywood Starlets ended up disbanding after the riots. The Bottle City Boys was a virtual gang that live in a virtual reality city called the Bottle City. The Bottle City itself is based off Kandor, the captured Kryptonian city in the Superman comics that was captured by Brainiac, one of the Brainiacs, and shrunk and put into a bottle, and now Superman has had it in his Fortress of Solitude, and that has changed over the years. They changed their names from Kandor to the Bottle City Boys because they were being sued by Warner Brothers. So I had kind of named them and thought about them as a play on how these giant corporations, these brands, use their copyrights to cut down on fan sites and things of that nature. And so why not extend it to gangs? The final 5 family was the New Panthers, the New Black Panthers. It's an African-American group dedicated to peaceful coexistence, as well as a peaceful protest against the corporate and government system that has been oppressing African-American people for centuries. I had the 5 families set up, and I had kind of come up with them on the spur of the moment during the writing of Under the Amoral Bridge, because I needed a way for Stonewall Ricardo to get Bridge out of the warehouse and into the train. So I came up with the idea of these 5 families using the trains, the subway trains that the city and the corporations had left behind. So it was just kind of a toss-off idea. I didn't really think much about it, but there was a kernel of it that had come from the original lore of the role-playing game that, if you watched any other videos, that this whole Bridge Chronicles thing kind of grew out of. There had been, in the part of that lore, there was a section of Los Angeles in 2030 that was walled off and was televised firefights. And it was kind of based off of or an homage to the American flag stuff that I talked about in a previous video. They would have Saturday Night Combat. The Go Gangs in Chicago, Saturday Night Combat, would get all hopped up on this show called By Violence, and then they would go and they would attack the Plex, and of course the Rangers would stop them. So I had kind of wanted to pay homage to that in the lore, and so I came up with the idea of Gangland. And I didn't really put a lot of thought into it back when I wrote it in the 90s. And even, when I had it in Under the Amoral Bridge, I didn't think a lot about it. But as I was trying to come up with another novel after the No Circuit, I came up with the idea of, well, let's take that gangland idea and let's see how that got to be where, how that came to be. And Bridge would be kind of the perfect guy to set something like that up, to even think something like that up. The concept of it was really that there would be gangs that would fight, and it would be televised over the global net, and people could bet on it or whatever, and of course they'd be watching, blood sports, essentially. Kind of taking that whole MMA, WWE cage match kind of thing and just blowing it up, and putting it on steroids, or more steroids. That's where I knew I wanted to go when I started. I forgot to mention, but if you haven't watched these before, spoilers for the book. I'm definitely going to give stuff away. I'm not going to put it behind any kind of spoiler thing. It's all spoilers. I knew that I wanted to go to gangland. I knew that wanted to be my end point, and I wanted to get from here to there. And how did I do that? This is a test of the emergency broadcasting system. This is just a test to see if my microphone is working.